I was born in Birmingham. I was born in December the 15th, 1923. My mother listened to the preaching on the radio all day long while she was doing her housework, if she wasn't reading her Bible. And when I was about 12 or 13 years old, my mother, we had a yellow frame, wooden frame house. My mother got her a ladder and printed on the front of our house, "Jesus is the light of the world." And she was real close to the Lord. My dad was a printer, and he traveled a good bit, and my dad was an alcoholic. My mother used to hide his bottle from him, and he made good money. Even during the Depression, he made good money. But the bootleggers got all his money, and my mother would try to hide his bottle from him. He got under our house one night and went on, and he thought he had found his bottle that mother had hid from him, and it was a bottle of kerosene, and he drank kerosene and he died about 3 or 4 days later. It was a Sunday afternoon about 1 o'clock, and I had no idea where Pearl Harbor was, and I knew what it meant, kind of. I knew it meant I was about to ride it. I was 17 when the Japanese, in 1941, but a few days later, on the 15th of December, I was 18, and I had to register for the draft during my 18th year, and I didn't want to be drafted. I had always wanted to be a Marine, and so I went on to join the Marine Corps, but I didn't actually leave for boot camp until January the 6th, when I was 19 years old. I just turned 19. I never gave any other branch of the service a thought. I wanted to be a Marine. I think one of the things is, at the post office, and they had a poster of a Marine in dress blues. I never got any dress blues. And it said, "Be the first to fight." And I thought, boy, if I go in the Marine Corps, I'll get a lot of glory. When the 4th Marine Division was formed, it was started on the East Coast. And then it came to Camp Pendleton, that's where I was, on the West Coast. And I was made a rifleman in the 4th Marine Division. The first landing we made was in the Marshall Islands, Roy and the Moore in the Marshall Islands. And Roy was just a little atoll big enough for an airfield. And I didn't remember seeing a live Japanese on that island. The 23rd, I was in the 23rd Marines of the 4th Marine Division, 23rd Regiment. And all the fighting was on the moor, so I really didn't see a live Jap, and I thought to myself, combat is not so bad. I found out later it was. We had a rest base on Maui in the Hawaiian Islands, and Maui was beautiful, and we trained there for Saipan. We were loading the supplies at Pearl Harbor, at the West Lock area section of Pearl Harbor. And there was 8 LSTs tied up together. And it's called the second tragedy. I don't know if y'all. 5 of those LSTs blew up. On Sunday morning, we heard Tokyo Rose on shortwave radio saying the 4th Marine Division will never reach Saipan. And we thought it would be submarines that they were going to try to use to keep us from reaching Saipan. When the first LST blew up, it was the first one, I saw somebody about 75 feet in the air that had got blown up. And I stood there watching, and the ammunition on the second LST caught on fire and blew up. When the ammunition on the third LST caught on fire and started blowing up, I went down below to tell everybody we had to abandon ship, and everybody was gone. I was the only one left on the ship. So they teach you in boot camp how to jump off of a 33-foot tower. So I knew I could see 5 people on the last LST, the 8th LST. There were still 5 people on it. And they had a Jacob's ladder hanging down. It's a rope ladder on the side of it. So I jumped in the water and climbed up on that rope ladder, and that ship was on fire in the forward part of the ship where the ammunition was stored. And there was one Navy officer, two sailors, and two Marines standing back on the close to the fantail of the ship. And that ship was going to blow up, and they had a fire hose in their hand and water running through that fire hose, but they weren't going. Sometimes people freeze. And it was the kindest, most humble man I've ever met. He was an All-American football player at the University of Georgia, but he was playing for the Green Bay Packers when the war started, and they still have a plaque in his honor at Lambeau Field, and because he got killed on Iwo Jima. And the defensive player of the game in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta every year is the Smiley Johnson Award. I never heard him say a curse word. He was a Christian. He carried a Bible right here all the time we were in combat. And for the most part, when we were at a rest base on Maui, he hung out with his platoon. He didn't hang out with the officers much. He was just a really special guy, and there's a lot of things I could tell you. Well, the landing on Saipan was really tough, and the Japanese, the first thing that I can think about is they had a long pier, and our Navy decided not to blow up the pier because they were going to load all of our supplies on ammunition and water and oil and all the things that, anyway, after they got all the supplies unloaded on it, the Japanese artillery blew up the pier, and I had to go 3 days without water on Saipan. So that's the first water they brought us to drink. They brought it in oil cans, and it was oily colored and tasted kind of like oil, but it was the best water I've ever drank. So when you go 3 days without water and it's real hot, it's tough. Not only that, but the Japanese counterattacked the first night on Saipan, and I had gotten in a, it was Carl, but I guess one of our big shells from the Navy ships had landed and made a pretty big hole. Me and another guy was in this hole, and we were on, it was a sugarcane mill in the little town. We were supposed to take Chair and Kanoa, which was a small town on. Anyway, the next morning it was a Jap. But right after that happened, there was a Jap on the other side of the road that I hadn't seen. They had to bump their grenades to make them active. He bumped his grenade and he rolled it across the road to my foxhole. But I had my pack sitting on, this is just one of the ways that the Lord took care of me. I had my pack sitting on the edge of my foxhole, and that grenade hit my pack and blew my pack up. The next morning there was a guy, like I say, we were on opposite sides of this little road. He must have been 5 feet from the Jap that bumped his grenade, and he had a shotgun. They had given every fourth man a shotgun. And I said, "Why didn't you kill that Jap when he bumped that grenade?" He said, "I didn't want to reveal my position." And I said, "We're not here to hide from the Japs, we're here to kill them." We always dug in a foxhole every night because it was only 15 days on Saipan when it didn't rain. But this boy started building us a shed where he found some old corrugated metal, and he found some sticks to prop up this metal on. And then he went somewhere and found a great big log. It was about this big around. He couldn't carry it. He was dragging it. I said, "What you going to do with that log?" He said, "I'm going to build a fort." And I said, "Man, you're crazy." And I kind of made fun of him. That night, our corpsman asked me, he said, "I'll stay awake all night if you'll let me have the VAR, and if any Japs counterattack tonight, I want to be able to say I killed a Jap." So I said, "Sure." You know, it was great to be able to sleep all night long and not have to take a watch. Usually we took 4-hour watches every night. And you could learn to see pretty good if the moon was out just a little bit. So the corpsman woke me up at 4 o'clock. He said, "I'm so sleepy I can't stay awake a minute longer if you don't mind taking over." So I said, "Sure." it wasn't 10 minutes till I saw a Jap patrol going by. It must have been from here to those doors back there from me. And so when I saw them, I just went up and down the line with my BAR shooting them. And I got all of them, I think. And of course they lay out there groaning the rest of the night. But I didn't hit one Jap, and he was laying facing me, and you can see a flash come out of a muzzle. I'm sure you all know that. And he fired back at me at my flash of that BAR, and the bullet hit that log right where it would have hit me in the chest and knocked splinters up in my face. So that log saved my life that night. The Japanese had convinced the civilians on the island that we would murder them and torture them, and a lot of them threw their children off the cliffs into the rocks and things, and the cliffs were real high on Saipan. A lot of them jumped, and we begged them. I mean, they had loudspeakers that begged them not to jump, but a lot of them jumped and killed themselves. We thought we were going back to Maui, and when we got aboard ship, they said, now you're going to take Tinian. Tinian was an island about 2.5 miles, I think, from Saipan, and Tinian was softer than Saipan. It wasn't too bad. So I did each one of these places. I lost really close people. After Tinian, we went back to Maui and trained for Iwo Jima. We didn't know we were going to Iwo Jima, and if any of you are not familiar, after we took Saipan and Tinian, the B-29s could reach Japan to bomb Japan, but Iwo Jima was about halfway between Saipan and Tinian and Tokyo. So, and they had fighter planes on Iwo Jima, and they were shooting up a lot of our B-29s. So that's the reason they decided we needed to take Iwo Jima. Know anything about Iwo Jima? We thought we would take it in 3 or 4 days. It was just 4.5 to 5 miles long and 2.5 miles wide at its widest point. But the Japanese general on Iwo Jima was really good. He got write-ups from some of the, I think from Howland Mad Smith, who was the Marine Corps head man. The Japs weren't on Iwo Jima, they were in Iwo Jima. He had miles of underground passageways from 30 to 75 feet underground. So all our pre-bombing on Iwo Jima didn't affect him any. And he had every inch of Iwo Jima zeroed in for wherever our front lines were. That's where we got all the artillery and mortar shells and small arms fire from. And the first day on Iwo Jima, we couldn't get off the beach. Iwo Jima was an extinct volcano, and it was sand mixed with ashes. And when you tried to run in it, you'd bury up about that far. But they had everything zeroed in on the beach on Iwo Jima, and I think we lost over 1,500 killed the first day on Iwo. Kind of on the southeast side of Iwo Jima, and right above where we landed, the 5th Division had to take Mount Suribachi, and it was kind of in the shape of a pork chop. Our job was to take the first airfield. We went up kind of at the end of the airfield and turned right to go north on the island. We were kind of in the middle of the island, and we took the first airfield the second day. And I never will forget, there was a little bit of at the end of the runway, we got underneath a little cliff-like place where we could see other guys coming across the airfield. And it was like watching a movie. You could see bullets hitting all around them when they tried to run across the airfield. And you could see some of them falling, and it was just, I never will forget thinking, this is like watching a movie, and it's real. It's really happening to these guys. They can't shoot me. You know, pride goes before destruction, the Bible says, and the Holy Spirit before a fall. They can't shoot me. I started off running, and I ran about 30 yards, and like I say, you couldn't run very long in that volcanic ash. As soon as I started walking, I got shot. I got shot right here above my left ankle, and the shock of it, it's like getting hit with a baseball bat. The shock of it made me throw my VAR away, and I knew I couldn't go try to find my VAR if they were shooting heavy. I knew I needed to get underground. So I started hopping on one leg, and I've never seen anybody get shot that didn't knock them down. And I started hopping on one leg, and my foot was flopping like this, but I wasn't hurting. And I finally found some steps leading down to their underground tunnel. And I hopped down those steps, even though I had a lot of ammunition on me. I hopped down those steps on this one leg and didn't miss a step. And when I got down far enough that I could get out of their line of fire, I lay back down, and then my leg, I couldn't stand to move it anymore. The feeling came back in my leg, and I couldn't even flinch. I took my belt off and made a tourniquet for my leg, but I knew I was a dead man. I knew that if the Japs had seen me shoot me, that I was going to see a Jap down at the foot of those steps, and they were going to kill me. I lay there about an hour, and no Jap showed up. I don't know if any of you read the Bible or not. But Daniel in the lion's den, God closed the lion's mouth. So I don't know what happened to those Japs, but no Japs ever showed up. Somebody had seen me get shot, and they had gotten in touch with a tank. After about an hour, this tank came up, blocked the entranceway to these steps. They found some pieces of board, and they had some gauze, and they made a splint for my leg. They put me on the back of that tank and carried me to the beach. At the beach, there was hundreds of guys laying on stretchers that had been wounded. And the guy laying next to me, I thought he was dead. I knew there was some dead ones there too. They flew me back I went on a hospital ship back to Saipan. From Saipan to WWII Heights Naval Hospital at Pearl Harbor is where they operated on my leg. They put I was thankful they didn't take my leg off. After I left Pearl Harbor where they operated, they flew me back to the States. I was at Oak Knoll Naval Hospital in Oakland, California for, I guess, maybe a month. I had an uncle. I was real bashful. I'd never had a date all this time. I was so bashful after I quit school and went in the Marine Corps. I never had a date. I was too bashful. My uncle, my dad's brother, lived in San Francisco. He had two teenage daughters, one 17 and one 19. They brought about 20 girls to that ward where I was on the hospital at Oak Knoll in Oakland. And I was the most popular guy on that ward. Those guys couldn't do enough for me with all those girls coming in. I had one young lady that would come to see me every day and write me a letter every night while I was there. So I was so afraid when I found out that they were going to transfer me to Pensacola Naval Air Station Hospital, close to Birmingham. It was the closest naval hospital close to Birmingham. I didn't tell her I was going to get transferred because I was afraid she'd want to kiss me bye, and I didn't know how to kiss a girl. I stayed in the hospital at Pensacola Naval Air Station for 14 months. At that time, my lieutenant had taught me about lifting weights and everything. I weigh about 140 now. I've shriveled up to nothing, but I weighed about 215 then, and my troubles weren't over with. When I got to Pensacola and got on the ward there, I went to the gym every day and worked out. The nurse on the ward started trying to get me to take her to the movie. She was an officer and I was an enlisted man. I finally told her, there was a guy slept above me named Patrick. I said, if Patrick will go to the movie with us, I'll take you to the movie. What happens in the Marine Corps? I did receive a Silver Star on Saipan. We fought a fight one day where everybody was getting killed. My assistant VA Army was laying right beside me, and he raised up, we were going to take this hill. At the top of the hill, there was thick underbrush and huge boulders and everything. At the bottom of the hill, it was just like this rug. For the first 2/3 of the hill, it wasn't any cover at all. And we started to take up this hill, and the Japanese pinned us down. And like I say, my assistant raised up just a little bit to ask the lieutenant something, and a bullet split his skull. It killed him, and it ended up, a lot of the guys got killed trying to take that hill, and we didn't take the hill. We got driven off the hill, but I stayed on the hill with my BAR till everybody else got away. And my lieutenant put me in for the Silver Star,